things are gonna be all. In my mind, I've got 'em big red on the line. That's where I go when I'm itching to feed my 7-day addiction.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Art of Fishing Show. Here we are. Today is episode 8 of the Art of Fishing Show. It's crazy. It's like just in a short period of time. This is our 8th episode, and obviously we've done 3 on the Feed the Addiction. So we're actually pretty busy here. We had a show here last night talking about brews and beers and all that cool stuff, and now we're talking about something that really also just as cool too, which we're talking about fly fishing. So, but yeah, thanks for tuning in for episode 8 of the Art of Fishing Show. Our show is really focused on sharing the passion and love of fishing, really. And so we talk about all things fishing. And today we got a very, very special guest here. We've been trying to make this happen for a little while now. And just ever since this show started, we were like, man, we'd love to have Bud here. And without further ado, I mean, we'd like to introduce our guest today, Bud Roland, who's going to be giving us an introduction of what we need to know, how to get started with fly fishing in saltwater here in the lower Laguna Madre.
Howdy, folks. My name is Bud Roland. Fly fishing is my game. It's one of the loves of my life. And I've been fly fishing almost all of my life ever since I can remember. I moved down here to the Rio Grande Valley in 1973. I sold out some businesses in Kansas, and I had been working 12 to 18 hours a day, and I was burnt out. I love fishing. I love hunting. And I was either going to go to Australia or I was going to go to South Texas. I had been here and worked one summer when I was a kid and fell in love with it. Oh, wow. And so I came down here, and for 2.5 years, almost 3, I did what a lot of people dream about doing, and sometimes they're scared to do it, but they did do it. But I was prepared to do it. I took 2.5 to 3 years off of my life to hunt and fish. And I spent most of my time in Mexico. I'd go down to fish Lake Guerrero. I'd go down to Veracruz. I go down to into Cancun area and all that area, and I fish fly, I fish rod and reel, I fish spinning rod, and I did a lot of spear fishing. I was a spear fisherman back in them days, and when I finally settled down, and I decided, I've been running around here for 2.5, 3 years. I think it's time to make some money again. So I got back in business, and I was running ads on Channel 5, 4, and 23 at the time for my carpet and furniture business. I had stores in Houston and Brownsville, Harlingen, McAllen, and an office and warehouse over at South Padre Island. And we were out hunting in Mexico around Progreso, and the TV station I did most of my ads on said, why don't we take a camera and try shooting a show over there? So we did a show, and all of a sudden, that show, somebody wanted it by the name of Miller Brewing Company.
And so what kind of show was that?
It was a hunting fishing show, and what we did, whatever we hunted, we did the game preparation, and then we'd also do a cooking section.
Okay.
And then
in the same show, in the same episode?
Same show. We'd film one day, and then we would go edit and do the cooking the next day.
Okay.
And lo and behold, it became kind of popular. And while I was doing that show, I kept thinking, I know I can catch these trout out here on the fly rod because I grew up in Wyoming, Kansas, and Oklahoma. That's a long story. I'm not going to tell you about all that. But I said, I know I can catch those trout, same just like I caught when I was a kid in Wyoming. And sure enough, I had bought a place at Port Mansfield and had a 25 Mako, a pretty big boat. But I started fly fishing off that Mako and where I could go, and I started catching sea trout. They were just little, 12, 15, 18, 20 inches. But I really got hooked on fly fishing saltwater. The problem was all my rods, my reels were freshwater, and they soon rusted out and went to pot. So I started searching for saltwater. Nobody down here fly fished. There was no store sold fly fishing equipment. And so I wound up in Houston, Dallas, and the Austin Angler was just getting to going good, and got into fly fishing. And I have done very well in fly fishing. If you want to ask some questions about my fly fishing,
Yeah, absolutely. People can actually ask questions here on the comments here, and I'll read them out to you.
Okay.
So we got we got Santiago watching us from San Antonio, so I know Santiago's a fly fisherman, and I'm sure as we go through the show, he'll have some questions here, specifically to that. So really, like one thing that really stood out was South Texas and Australia. I mean, and you chose South Texas over Australia. So what's some of the reasoning behind that?
My mother had become a winter Texan, and I came down here and started fishing. Now I fell in love with Mexico.
Okay.
And I had been down here and worked one summer when I was 13 years old for an uncle. So, I mean, I was a little bit aware of it, but not like I had become. It was a great place. The hunting and the fishing back in the 70s was fantastic. I mean, I just fell in love with it.
Yep.
And I'd been to New Zealand when I was in the Marine Corps. Back in the 50s. That's got to give my age away. I know I don't look that old. I say that all the time. So, but I've always tied flies, and there's a lot of roadkill and picking up hides and stuff down here in South Texas and Mexico, and I'd make flies and I'd go catch fish with them. But Australia would have been a great place. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I came to South Texas.
Yep. And now, so you came here and you stayed here since the 70s.
I stayed here. I'm 83. I'll be 84 in May, and I've been here since 1973.
So a while. So you've seen a lot of stuff. You've seen the valley grow a significant amount.
A very significant amount. Yes.
So in the 70s when fly fishing was you're getting into it. I mean, so how do you find people to go fly fishing with? Like,
well,
what do you
that's
do?
the problem. There was no fly fisherman, so I fished a lot by myself. And I finally bought me a John boat with a motor called a riffle runner that they used. It was an Evinrude engine, and it was kind of a jet engine that they used out in the rivers in Oregon and Washington to run the rivers out there with. And that was my first shallow water boat. It's just kind of slow, but it would get me to areas where I could wade fish and get out and start it. And I got into the saltwater fly fishing, and I couldn't find anything, so I started a fly fishing shop in my warehouse. And I started teaching fly fishing because had it on that television show. People would see me catching fish on a fly. But we want to learn. So we wound up with about 350 students over 17, 18 years.
And how long did you run that fly shop?
Oh, for probably 15 years. And then I sold it out to some of my students, and they took it over and went from there, and they decided that they didn't want sage and all the good things that I had accomplished. They wanted Orvis, so they went to Orvis, and they didn't last very long.
Oh, man, that's a shame.
So, but still, there was some more fly shops started up, and I'm glad they did, and there's definitely a need for a fly shop down here in the valley.
So when you started like fly fishing, you say you saw some trout and you said, I can catch those on the fly. Yeah. Was there a big difference between the freshwater and the saltwater?
There is a big difference between freshwater and saltwater. And number one, you're using a little bit bigger rod. In freshwater, we're using probably 4 and 5 and maybe up to a 6 weight for bass. And in saltwater, we were using 6 up to a 10 weight. And eventually I got into offshore saltwater fishing. And I'm talking about for kingfish and what we call depth charging. A Cortland made a lead core line for fly fishing that would go down about 10 inches a second. And I used to make some what I call sinking lines I would add to my regular line to get a fly down where I could catch snapper. And I was catching just about everything. But I started catching reds. I'd catch snook. I'd catch flounder. In fact, on YouTube, there's a section in there of me catching flounder up in the North Cut, probably back in the late 70s, early 80s. And I think that I had 30-some flounder that day on the fly. And it's on YouTube.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, actually, we'll look it up and we'll find a link to it and we'll put it up here down below.
And I used to fish the North Cut with another family called Roland, same name as me. We're not related, but we all hunted and fished together for quite a few years. And I think David Roland was with me that day up there. Caught a lot of fish, caught a lot of reds. And I wound up also used to fish tournaments, not with a fly rod, but rod and reel, wade fishing with my fishing partner was a guy from San Antonio named Bayless Miller. They have Bill Miller barbecue up there. Bayless is probably one of the best bay fishermen I know of. And we won a lot of tournaments, won a lot of Calcuttas, and I used to fish offshore in tournaments too. And what ruined me for offshore, we were pulling big 80 wides out around a place we call about 100, past the 100 fathom curve, out in deep water. And I thought I had some grass on this big reel. I pulled in, and there's a 7 3/4 pound sailfish on there. And I said, man, would that have been a blast on a fly rod? And I said, I hate it. It was dead. And I just hated to have to kill a fish like that. And he just hit the wrong lure. That's all. Yeah. And so I said, that's it. I'm not going to fish this offshore tournaments anymore. I've done it for years. I'm going to start fly fishing. That's all I'm going to do.
And what year was that, kind of roughly?
I quit fishing tournaments back in I'd say sometime in the 90s.
Okay.
And went strictly fly rod.
Yeah. And during that time, I mean, was there a big transition in the number of people fly fishing?
Well, I started teaching, so there was more. We were
and you started teaching
some fly fishing
around the 90s, is kind of the same time frame?
In the 90s, and we'd started developing a lot more fly fishermen, a lot more interest, people getting into it. And then I had sold the shop, so I was clear out of it.
Yeah, but you sold the shop too. I mean, at that point, you were essentially retired, right? You were you were getting pretty close.
I don't believe in retirement. So I've never retired. I'm still active. I'm still in business of some kind.
But when you say you were teaching class, were they coming to your shop? Or?
We had a really, yes, they would come to the shop. They'd sign up, and we had a 5-acre area where we used to have these big tables about like this, but they were like this, like you was on the front of a boat. And we'd do a 360-degree area, and we would have decoys at 20 foot, 30 foot, 50, and 100 feet. And what it is, we teach a 360-degree class where you had to learn to handle the wind.
Gotcha.
And we developed some really great fly fishermen. And one of the young men that helped us was Rick Hartman, who became a world distance caster, not because of me, but Rick's hard work on his own self. And he guides out of Harlingen to this day.
Wow.
Rick is it. And one of the best fly casters in the country.
So when you take a course, obviously the idea is that you come in there not knowing anything about fly fishing and you come out. So kind of what's the structure, kind of the evolution of it?
We start off with the basics, how to hold the rod, how to put the reel on, how to put backing on, how to put your line on, all the different knots. But in our classes, you had to tie a fly. So we had a 3-hour class. They'd come about before dark, and we would have an hour out in the casting field, and then we would be at least an hour tying flies, doing knots, leaders, going over the rods, going over the food chain that the fish feed on and trying to duplicate by tying a fly like the food chain, and really there's zooplankton and phytoplankton. There's animalistic and vegetable type.
Yeah.
And what the fish feed on, the tides, how the tides makes the big difference in catching fish and not catching fish. If you've got moving water, you're going to have the planktons moving. And then little fish feed on that, bigger fish, predators feed on them. Low tide, high tide. And on the incoming tide, well, they're working towards them to pick those baits up. And on the high tide, those big fish are sitting out there at the edge of the hole, and they're waiting for that bait to come by so they can eat it. Well, you got to think about all that, and you're fishing, whether it's fishing a fly or worms or topwater or whatever you're doing.
So it seems like they really learned a lot about just fishing. I mean, just coming to this class, they became better anglers.
They became better anglers and better conservationists. And we like to catch and eat, but we like to catch and release too.
Right. Yep.
And
we actually had we were talking to Wayne and Ernest a few weeks ago, and there was around that as well too, right? Yeah, it's okay to no one by no means are we saying everyone should catch and release, but let's be mindful we don't need freezers full of fish that a lot of that goes to waste and whatever. So just
I couldn't give away all the fish that I caught.
Yeah.
And when I fished tournaments, when I first started fishing tournaments down here, we were fishing Ted Reds weighing in you're going to keep the first 10 reds you get.
Oh,
You're
wow.
gonna 10 trout and usually 5 or 10 flounder. I can't remember. There was huge strayers when you're fishing these big tournaments. And I was on the TIF board for a while, on the executive board, and through Betty Tubbs and Mike Gower and some of the other members, we got the amount of the fish you'd be turning into the tournament reduced considerably, which helped it a lot. And also, I put fly fishing into the Texas International Fishing Tournament.
Wow. Okay.
I said I'd sponsor the trophies if y'all put it in.
And do they still do that right now?
Yes, they do. It said if you're a fly fisherman, you want to fish Texas International, it's the only tournament I know right now that has fly fishing. It has for the last 20 years.
Now, going back to the classes, you talked about obviously, going through the food chain, going through.
Hold on here.
What these,
we have a little bit of an issue here right now. Let me fix this here. They said the camera is frozen here. Let me come back to it and see what I can do. Sorry about that. Not sure this is the first time we.
I talk too much.
That's a good thing.
Sorry guys. Let's see here what we have here. So. That's the first time that ever happens to us. So. Not sure what happened there. All right. It looks like we're back up.
You want to put it?
I think they can still hear us. Just the camera went out.
You want to put it on the TV so we can see that?
Yeah. Well, okay. So we'll edit that out on the final one. So.
You got playback?
No, I mean we're live right now, so we'll eventually come back and get it right here. So it looks like this is still there's a little bit of a delay, but it looks like it's working now. Hey Sam, can you hear us or can you guys see us? You guys we're good? Looks like we're good now. All right, good deal. Sorry, we're back. Yeah, sorry about that. So I think you guys can still hear us. But just the back live here. So, yep, the camera was frozen. And actually, I should have taken that opportunity to grab a beer, but since I didn't, I'll ask my partner here.
We had a question over
Yeah.
here.
Well, going back to the question, you're talking about the food chain, going back to, now, was all this veered to saltwater or freshwater since you were doing the classes here?
The food chain goes either way.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes either way for fresh or saltwater. And in the classes, I usually had between 8 and 10 students, and it was a 5-day class, and we would take them all out for a day's fishing. That was included in the class. And out of maybe 10 guys, had never fly fished it before, most of them, out of 10 of them, approximately 2 would catch a fish on the first go-round. But those guys were hooked.
There you go.
They were good, but it's amazing how many fly fishermen that are out there that I run into that went through that class and are fly fishing to this day. There's I had 50-some international students, Central South America, and I call it Alaska International. I even had 2 students from Alaska, and every once in a while I get a little note. I can hardly remember these guys, some of them. And they'll send me a fly. I tied this fly, and I caught this fish. I'll have a picture. It's kind of neat. I love it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, just going out there with someone that knows and having just building that sort of confidence in it, right? It's just like even like people that today don't fish salt plastics or any kind of artificial. They just don't have any confidence in it,
Well,
right?
let me tell you something about fly fishing. There's nothing more beautiful than to drift fish. Most of the fish I catch are in 10, 12 inches of water to a foot and a half. And I'm talking about some world record trout and some world record red and a world record black drum. Numerous world records. I'm bragging, I guess. I don't mean to brag.
Go ahead.
No,
yeah.
that's
But I've got them, and I caught them all. They were caught in shallow water, except for my offshore. I had 2 offshore records, too. But there's just something about and I'm not an early morning fisherman unless I want to fish topwater on the fly. I normally fish from 9:30 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon. And if you want to know why, that's the hours I fish. In South Texas and probably Florida too, we have a predominant southeast wind blowing us to the northwest. Now, if you're on a drift, that's the perfect drifting conditions. And that sun, as it's coming up, early in the morning, there's a glare. You can't see your fly. You can't see your fish really good. The top water is great. It's wonderful. I got lazy. I like to have my coffee and read the paper.
And tie some flies.
Yeah, but if you've got 5, 10 miles an hour, 20, even at 20, you got a drift bag, or you got power poles, you can make that drift on your water if your boat track's good. And those fish don't see you with that sun in their eyes. You can get pretty close. And people think, well, I've got to make such a long cast to be able to catch a fish in saltwater. I mean, they spook. And there's so many articles been written on catching large sea trout. And years ago, I used to do some seminars. And I would read all these stories about catching fish. Well, some of the writers are really good. Some of them, they go out with the guide once and they think they know everything about it. And they don't know what they're talking about. And one of the long cast is not a necessity. If you can cast 30, 40, 50 feet, you can have a wonderful time fly fishing using the wind and using the sun to your advantage.
So you're coming in on that southeast wind at between 9:30 to 2:30 at 30 to 50 foot.
It's coming up and it's in their eye. And in the afternoon, well, then it becomes a little more. But let me tell you something. If a fish can be 20 foot from you, he's still going to hit. He's not really seeing you. But you let a cloud go over, that fish is gone.
He's gone. He spooks,
He sees you immediately.
And this may be a silly question, again, I'm very, very new to this and I don't know much about it, but has to be side casted?
No.
So it's like throwing, like chunking a lure.
If it's cloudy, I usually don't fish, but I will.
Okay.
Because I love to fish. That's exercise. I got a Fitbit, gives me, I get some exercise. Every body feels good. And I'll blind cast. Before I had a little heart problem, I'd blind cast 6-7 hours a day if I had to fish.
Wow.
And I'm working, but you can see the potholes. You can see.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll be able to see the fish too, and it's not always clear water.
Correct.
I like to fish mud streaks. A lot of fish down there. That mud streaks a lot of times has mullet feed in there, fish feeding on them, or drum feeding on crabs or whatever. And I do work those mud streaks, and I will blind cast. And we're not always going to have the perfect condition. The ideal perfect condition is southeast wind, 10, 12, 15 miles an hour, blowing you to the northwest, good sunshine, and perfect.
On the boat while you're out drifting, yeah.
Well, I quit wade fishing because of that little virus that's in the water.
Okay.
And as I got older, sometimes I bump a leg, I have a little scratch or something. Well, I don't want to get that virus.
Yeah.
I've been through the mill medically anyway. I want to stay healthy,
But when you were wade fishing, I mean, I guess that lends itself more to, really whatever kind of conditions the weather's at, right? Because you're more doing those blind
I'll
casting.
be honest with you. I have probably caught more fish wade fishing than I have drift fishing.
Yep.
And I've had some unbelievable days wade fishing with a fly rod.
Yeah.
And kayaking with a fly rod.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Probably the second best day I've ever had was on a kayak.
Standing or sitting?
Well, I set side saddle.
Okay.
And I move the kayak with my feet just like this. And I've got a pole. I can put that pole in a little hole in the boat, stick it down there and hold me there. And I've taken everything off a kayak. And I've had some 40, 50 fish days.
Yeah.
And I'm talking anywhere from piggy perch to jailbirds, which is your striped fish, I'm so used to calling them jailbirds. What's the name?
Oh, the sheephead?
Sheephead, yeah. We call them jailbirds. Bayless Miller got me started on that. But that snook, the reds, and they'll come up pretty close to you. And it's a blessing to be on a kayak and a nice day and just taking your time and watching for tails and real shallow water. Oh, I love it.
I would imagine wade fishing or working off a kayak is probably easier than fishing off a boat. I mean, I would imagine a boat, if you have plenty of space, if you're out there by yourself, but if there's other people out there fishing on the boat, it would make it difficult.
My boat, I am spoiled. I've got two, you got a picture of it, maybe they'll show it to the folks. I have two casting. On a poling tower, I was the first person I know of to net a poling tower up where I could strip my line in there and the wind would hold it against the net and I could fish off my poling tower. And the front tower is netted. But I made them big enough that I could take a student up there and work with it either on the back or the front. And if you got a left-handed, right-handed, it's perfect
Yep.
for fly fishing because you're not crossing each other at all. And I used to not take anyone on my boat that was throwing a spinning rod or a casting rod because you've got some fly rods that cost a great deal of money, and most of them are guaranteed for life. Just for $25, you break one, they'll send it in and send it back to you and fix it or give you a new one. But when I started dating this gal I'm dating now, she fishes a spinning rod, so I'm trying to get her to switch over.
Little by little, you're teaching her, right?
I'm going to take her because she's a good lady.
Yeah. So definitely. So I mean, I've gone out wade fish or fly fishing, and like kind of my mindset is I'm still learning it, and so like I get a little bit frustrated, when I can't cast as far, and I just kind of work in that. And you've taught me a few things, kind of rolling it and kind of working that cast and just kind of working on the rhythm. But what are some common mistakes that you see on people that are learning how to do it?
Well, I try to tell everybody to keep their wrist straight. Number one, and even when you're driving down the road, if you'll think about it, you grab a pencil. And do that. When you do this, because you're used to doing this with a spinning rod and a casted rod, you put a loop in your line, and it just doesn't work. And really, I advise anybody that's new that wants to start fly fishing, take a lesson. Get started right.
Check the camera again. I'm not sure what we're doing here. What's going on here today with our camera? We're getting some issues with it. Do you see it as well too? I don't know. We've actually never had issues with this camera.
It's freezing.
It keeps freezing on us. I don't know what it is today. Yeah, let's looks like we're back up. I don't know, but just kind of watch it if you don't mind, and just see what the issue is. Sorry, guys. I don't know. You guys have seen our other shows, and there we go. Looks like we're back on here, and so. But anyway, so people are making this mistakes. They're not holding the rod right. They're bending the wrist.
A lot of women, but a lot of guys will start. They want to put this. If I had a fly rod, I'd show you. Or just give me any kind of rod.
Hey, Riley, will you grab one of those rods for us, please? The fly rod there that's there? The rod with the rear on the line.
Don't have to, just grab
Yes,
it.
that was fine.
Yeah.
I'm just going to show you how we recommend holding a fly rod. And you want to hold a fly rod just like that. Oops. That rod feels pretty good. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of times they'll try to cast like this with their finger. Yeah. And you can't load the rod properly. So you want to hold your rod like this and keep your wrist straight.
And so that's the first thing, learning how to hold and learning how to cast.
Learn how to hold a rod, learn how to put the backing on, put the line on, make your leader, how to thread it through, and you double your fly line when you're putting it in here to thread it. So if you drop it, it'll hold right here.
It won't roll back, yeah.
It won't roll back. And the rod you're going to want to fish with, if you're fishing the Laguna Madre, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Are 6-weight up to about a 10-weight rod, because you could be fishing the jetties, you could be fishing for drum. We got drum will go 50, 60 pounds if you're lucky to catch one of them.
What kind of action are you looking on your rod? Are you looking for something fast, something moderate?
I like I myself like a fast rod. I don't like a slow rod.
Yeah.
I like a rod that's pretty fast. And you don't fight the rod from the tip. You fight your rod for this section here.
What do you mean fight the rod?
Fight the fish on the rod.
Okay.
If you try to lift like that, sometimes you're going to break a rod.
Yep.
You're putting your rod into a huge bend. It's not made, but you could put it like the rod. The fish is going that way. You're holding your rod like that, and you're putting the bend here, not on the very end.
Yeah, and it's different, right? People aren't used to that,
and you don't want to have the drag set too tight. I always have what I call lip tight drag.
Or you can pull it out.
So that fish could run. By the time that line gets out to the end, it might be 3 pounds here. By the time it gets to the end and out, it's 10, 12, 15 pounds.
Yeah.
And you can check that with a scale. You'll find out, hey, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of line pressure once that line gets out.
Just on the way the rod is loaded and bent
Right.
and pulling and whatever else you're loading on. Good deal. And so someone wants to learn how to cast. So you said there's these
I would
courses.
definitely take a lesson.
Okay.
And you don't have to buy an expensive rod to get started, but I would try a number of rods. And just like here, you got rods set up, you can take them out, take some old line, go out in the street, let them try it.
Yeah.
You know, and you get a rod that feels good to them. And there's slow, fast, and extra fast rods. And I like a fast rod that loads because I like to shoot fast sometimes. 'Cause all of a sudden there's a fish right there, pow.
Get it out there in front of him as quick as
Yeah.
you can.
So like when I choose a rod, obviously it depends if I'm throwing a soft plastic, when I'm throwing a top water, and so forth. So when you're choosing a rod it's just going to be more preference because you're basically throwing the same thing, correct?
Right.
Okay.
I will have 2 or 3 rods that I prefer to fish. I fish a 7, 8, and a 9. And in fact, I actually take a 7, 2 8s, and a 9.
Okay.
And I've got maybe an Uno fly on one, and I'll have on my 9 weight, I'll usually have a popper, either deer hair popper with a little foam on the front, which we'll do sometime, maybe.
Yeah, actually, we can do it in here one day.
Yeah. And I may have a sinking fly on one of my 8s that'll sink 1.5 to 3 inches a second.
Okay.
And that's based on the lead.
And if I'm fishing the really shallow water, I fish by my 7 or my 8, and I've just got a neutral buoyancy fly that hit the water. It's just on top, but it'll sink a little bit. But on the shallow water, I'm mainly sight fishing. I'm very seldom blind fishing.
Okay.
And my boat with 2 people on it, it's got a 200 horse on it. It's a new water boat. Draws 6.5 inches of water.
Yep.
And I can pole in shallow water, and that also gives me some exercise. And I need upper body, and to me it's a dream that I love to be in all the time. That's fly fishing.
Yeah. So I know the Laguna Madre Fly Fishing Association. They do fly casting lessons. I believe it's once every 2 months or once. Mark.
I'm not sure Mark has all that information, but they've got free fly tying classes.
Once a month, first Thursday of every month, they have a free tying lesson.
And it's a good way to get involved and learn and see if you like it.
Yeah, and those are really nice because you don't have to have anything. Like you show up and whoever's leading the class, he brings all the vices, all the material, and he's going to instruct you and he's going to walk around, make sure everybody's moving along the same place.
And if you're a fly tyer, you bring your own stuff.
Right? Yeah. So definitely, I mean, there's some resources here locally, specifically again the Lower Laguna Fly Fishing Association. But outside of that, is there anyone else that you're aware of here?
Not really.
Let's do anything.
But that's a good way to go. Hopefully, you're going to be doing something.
Yeah, I mean, part of what we're doing here is, we had Mark in here, so we're trying to be more active in that that kind of this culture, this group here, this community of fly fishing out here, and even just the other day that we did our fly tying class in here, there was a few people in here that never been fly fishing and never were exposed to it, and this is the first thing that they tying that fly, that brown shrimp that we tied with Mark. And actually they it's like, hey, this is really cool. They had a good time doing that, and they want to go out and fish it, and they're like, hey, I want to go try this out.
Let me tell you, for these kids, the minute if they paid any kind of attention to what you're doing, my kids started fly tying when they were, little. And if they come in and say, I want to try it, well, I'd let them tie. And what will this one catch, Danny? What will this one catch? And some of them look terrible. All 3 of my boys become expert fly tyers.
Yep, and it's something that you'll keep for hopefully they're
All
passing
their
on,
life. For young kids, it's great hand-eye coordination. They get really good with hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, and so like we were talking about that here, kind of what you did with your shop with kids and kind of getting them involved, and you would have events, and so you definitely did a lot to try to promote fly fishing within, not only the existing fishing community, but as well as the next generation of fishermen too.
That's right. Now, back to rods again. You're a husky guy, and I would say you would want a medium fast rod.
And that would be for what reason, though? Like because
I think you're going to wind up throwing topwater with it. You're going to wind up throwing weighted flies. That'll give you a 360 of everything you want to do. If you get a soft rod, it's
hard to load.
It's hard to load, and you're going to miss some hookups. You want a fast to medium fast rod is a good starter rod.
And that's really what we have here. We have like an 8-weight medium fast type rod just to kind of get people. So it has, it's a little bit easier to load. But the thing with like fast rods and any kind of rod, whether it's a fly rod or whatever, people you have a lot of broken tips, right? And so you have to know how to fish those.
You got to learn how to fight a big fish.
You're saying you keep saying the word load again. Not knowing.
To load, that's you strip your line off, and the rod loads, and that's with this principle. Same principle. If you shoot a bow and arrow,
gotcha.
You pull that back. You have to load that bow to let that arrow go. You have to load that rod, and the line does it. Loads that rod to shoot it out.
And that's one of the misconceptions, or just one of the, I guess people don't understand that when they're getting into fly fishing. It's like, hey, where do I get the weight from? Where's the weight coming from to load this? And it's really the line.
Let me tell you, people get confused on some of the terminology. I'll tell you a case of, I took 2 ladies out. We want to fly fish, and I thought they had a little experience, so I actually have to help made a cast. And then there was a fish coming up. I said, strip. Lady turns around, strip? You want me to take my clothes off?
Yes,
no,
and yes.
No, I want you to strip the line.
Yeah. So stripping the line, loading the blank. So loading, and so can you explain the process of loading your blank when you're casting or
Loading the rod when you're casting?
Right.
Well, that's why it would be a good idea to take a lesson.
Take a lesson.
And if you're going to strip some line out, because your rod's going to be approximately 9 foot.
Yep.
And your line that comes out, if you got to hold a fly, you've got roughly 8 foot of line there with your fly. Now, once you get a little more advanced, you're going to strip a bunch more line off your reel. It's going to be laying right there on the floor, or your casting basket or whatever. And I don't make a lot of false casts. That's casted. False casting is really important when you're up in the mountains. You're fishing a dry fly. You're false casting to dry your fly out because you want it to float. So then you're shooting it out, and when it comes down on the water like a natural fly, it floats right on top. Trout sees that, looks, oh, there's that fly I'm looking for lunch. He's up there and gets it,
So a dry fly is one that swims up on top.
That's a topwater. That's a topwater fly. You have, and when you learn about your food chain in freshwater, you start off with basically a larva, and then you subsurface, and then it becomes a surface.
Okay.
Eat. And there's a etymological view of that. Study it if you're going to use freshwater.
So I mean, right now it seems like there's a lot to it. I mean, and it's almost
really not.
And that's what I'm saying. Like it can sound a little bit overwhelming, but it really isn't that much.
If you think of tides, sun, and wind.
And that's stuff that you're going to think about fishing.
You can know what your tides are. You got an incoming tide at a certain tide. You got an outgoing tide at certain tide. During the slack tide, no water movement, and fishing's usually deader than heck.
Yeah.
You just don't catch any
Drink
fish
some beer.
because there's no food chain movement. A wind can create food chain movement. It can create a little movement, and once that food state starts moving, there's something starts feeding on it. Something bigger fish starts feeding on that. But the tide change. The more the tide, the heavier the tide, the more the water oxidates. And just like when that tide comes in, that fish has been laying there dormant in a slack tide. Hey, it's just like you getting up in the morning. Well,
I need to eat something.
Feeling good, and it turns on the feeding.
Yeah.
You're ready to go eat breakfast when you get up. Same with that fish, the tide.
Yep. Yeah, no, good deal. So we get started. Not we take some classes, whether it's a Laguna Madre Fishing Association, the classes they do, or I mean I know people up in my buddy. He's taking classes up in Houston and in San Antonio and that area too. So those are other areas where kind of there's a bigger fly fishing community.
There's a lot more fly fishermen out there than you'd think. But if you'd make a meeting and meet some fly fishermen, and a lot of these guys will take you fly fishing.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So just coming out to one of the fly tying events and just kind of just showing some
Meet
interest.
some people, and once you do it, it's kind of neat. In fact, if you really get set up here, I know of a place that you could take a bunch of kids out and start them on fly rods.
Yeah, no.
And it's not too far away.
Yeah, there's a place right down the road from here. We were talking about it the other day. Just
And
literally just
they
cheap.
have a free class.
Yep.
They have to be accompanied with their parent.
Of course.
Yep.
Mom has to be interested in it. Dad has to be interested in it. And bring them, and not just bring them here and babysit.
Yeah. So take a class, learn how to cast, and what about fly tying? So I mean, obviously there's a lot of different things you can fly. So when you're looking at tying a fly or fishing a fly, how are you choosing flies?
Well, you have flies. You have natural, and you have flies that are attractor flies. Otherwise, it's not the color of anything that they're eating, but it's an attractor color. Just like when you're throwing your worms and your topwater and stuff like that. Why they hit the attractor colors? I guess because they're attracted to it.
Yeah, these are your bright, your pinks, your chartreuse, your whatever these bright colors.
And some of the colors definitely produce better than the natural sometimes.
Yeah, depending on.
And again, if you take a redfish, I think a redfish will eat anything you throw at it.
Yeah, it's hungry for sure.
Because I've actually, like I told you, all this when I was doing the Miller ads for Miller High Life. I took a bottle cap and followed a little niche in each side of that bottle cap, put a hook in there, and put a little epoxy in there, epoxied that, and tied some feathers on it. Went out and caught a red, see if I could do it.
Yeah.
They'll hit it.
Yeah, you get a lot of reaction strikes too, right? Just kind of placing it out there. So, and then the other, you talked about being able to cast in distance, but I would imagine accuracy is.
The thing is, a lot of people think, well, I'm too old, or I can't cast that far. Some of the articles say I've got in order to catch a trophy trout, I've got to cast 100 foot or more, or 80 foot, and that's BS. Age is whatever you want to make out of it. The more active you are, the longer you're going to live, the more fun you're going to have.
And fly fishing is a good way to stay active, huh?
Yeah, and distance. That's what's the thing is, you can catch if you got sun in the fish's eye. And let me tell you, this is a true story. And it's on film. I think Mike Carter filmed this. One time, we were making a drift, and he was filming. I've had 2 or 3 guys that did filming. It's been years ago. But I was in the front tower of my boat. I think this was my old scooter. And I looked over on the left. There's a motor had cut a big trail in the turtle grass, and there was like a little highway there. There's the biggest dead old trout coming right up. It wasn't spooked. It went right under my boat, and it got the other side. I was scared to even look at it, and I just flipped my fly like that, and boy, big mud all of a sudden. I spooked that one. About that time, hey, my line's moving. That trout had ate my fly, not 4 foot from my boat.
Wow.
And it was over 30 inches, and got it on film.
Wow. Yeah. So again, it's not. I mean, you can.
You never know.
You can actually. I mean, like we said, we can get pretty close to the fish out there. The conditions are right.
If the sun's right, yes. And it's just a joy to sight fish and see that fish come up and eat that fly, sit that strip that hook right into it, and bring that fish in. It's even more of a joy to turn loose a big trout.
Yep. No, I mean, people still do it right now. People enjoy it out there. You go out there, you take a picture with the big trout, and you just kind of watch it swim away, and someone else enjoy it.
Another thing about new fly fishing, but if it's in a drift or wade fishing, fish some little teeny flies, catch some piggy perch. It's something to learn on.
Yeah.
Especially kids, especially.
Yeah.
And those piggy perch will hit them little flies, I guarantee you.
And so I mean, obviously tying flies is an art in itself, right? So fly fishing is an art, but then as well as tying flies, you can tie flies all day and never
tie
fish.
A fly at any age as long as you can see.
Yeah. so obviously, we made a video not too long ago about you tying the Uno fly.
Oh yeah, we learned something because we need closer up of what we're doing.
And so we are going to get that. We are going to.
And I've had a bunch of phone calls, emails, different. Bud, I saw you doing those bead eyes. How in the heck do I do that? So if we can get a close-up, I'll do.
Yeah, it'll help if we can help us out here and kind of get the camera a
I'll
little bit closer.
Slip my glasses through here.
And so yeah, so Bud's gonna show us here how we actually.
This is one of the neatest for you fly tires out there. This is the best eyes if you're going to use bead eyes or anything like that. When you're ready, this is some monofilament, probably 12, 15 pound. This is just a glass bead. Can you see that?
I think it looks pretty good right there. It says it'll show up right here once it catches up to it. But
Well,
we're a
those
few
beads
seconds
have got
out.
little holes, so we're going to take and put 2 beads on here, like that. Is it showing up, I hope? And we want to get it close.
Yeah, it looks pretty close there. I'm looking at it on the camera right there, and it's.
Now, all you're going to do is you got 2 beads. You're going to grab those beads. That's too much leader here. I'll turn this around.
So you put 2 beads in your leader line.
Yeah, we're going to take and go. We're going to take it, go back through those beads.
So you're running that tag into the loop in there. So you're basically doing a double in there.
Now, that's what you got right there. So you're going to pull on that. If you had a hook and a vise, you're going to set that right there in what I call the saddle, and you're going to tie that on, and you're going to cut the extra off. And there's 2 beads. Right
So just 2 beads, loop them together, loop them twice,
Right.
and then run it in there and tie that
The
up.
bigger
on
the
top.
bead, heavier the line. But that makes the best eyes. And that people have just been amazed. Why didn't I think of that? I've been doing that for 30-some
Yeah,
years.
actually, I showed that to a buddy of mine not too long ago. I mean, I told him you showed me when you first showed me, and like when I sat down with you, that was the first time I'd actually sat down and tied a fly, and this was I guess earlier this year, kind of March, February timeframe, and I showed him, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm making some eyes," and he's like, "Oh, I've never seen this done." And this is a guy who's he got me into fly fishing. He was like, "Oh, I'd never seen this," and I was like, "Oh, well, this is." I thought everybody did this, and so apparently, yes, apparently not. Yeah. So, but it's a good way, like you said in our video. It's probably some of the best eyes that you're gonna make here, the cheapest.
A lot of people they'll take that monofilament and burn it in, all that make eyes.
Yeah,
I don't like those at all. But these I throw these at the jetties, hit rocks, hit everything. I rarely will ever break one, and they're just glass beads. They're inexpensive. You go to craft store and get them, and just unbelievable great eyes. For a bag, you got enough to last a year, or 2 years, 5 years.
All right. So the other questions that we're having here is around just kind of like some of the biggest fish you've caught on in the bay here, with fly fishing.
Well, you said you had the record?
Well, I had a drum that weighed 58 or 9 pounds, set an IGFA world record on 12-pound test.
Oh, wow.
So I
And
guess,
on the leaders, if you're going to fish for records, and you're going to fish for IGFA, that's International Game Fish Associations, if you join IGFA, and I'll get some stuff here if people wants to join, I'll get you the information, or you go to IGFA.com probably and pull it up. Your fly fishing leader for record purposes, there's a total of 7 world records on one species of fish. So if you were catching redfish, there's a world record for 2-pound tippet breaking strength, 4, 6, 8, 12, 16, and 20. 20-pound is the strongest leader we've got, or breaking that strongest tippet that you can use to catch any world record fish on fly, whether it's sailfish or piggy perch. Don't make any
20-pound. Wow.
So you have to learn to. Your first 12 inches can be a leader, would be your leader.
Okay.
The second has to be 15 inches or more to be legal. And if you can get IGFA tested lines that'll meet their specs, that's even better.
Is most of the line you buy, most of the tippet you buy,
It's hard to find.
It's hard to find nowadays.
But there are some out there. Andy makes 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 16, and 20 in IGFA.
Okay, and so I mean, did you make your own leaders, or would you buy?
I make my own leaders. I've made them all my life, and I just do it.
So just so we're so we I mean we talked about it, you alluded to it. The leader has a certain taper to it, right? And so
Well, I usually start on the bay. I start off with the 40-pound to start my leader. Butt section. That's called the butt section.
So just so the guys that are watching us who may not know, so the leader is the first line coming that's actually tied to the
on your fly line, you're attaching monofilament.
Right. So
the
I
very
guess
end of it.
the backing is what's actually hooked up to the spool or to the reel.
On your reel, you put your backing usually 100 foot up to 400 yards.
Okay, and this is like the
Depending
bright
on the reel
orange
you're
or
using.
whatever green colors stuff that you see on reels.
When I really got into big game fly fishing for striped marlin, the sailfish, and I've taken most all the billfish with the exception of a black and a blue marlin. I've taken Pacific sail, Atlantic sail, striped marlin, and I've taken white marlin on fly. But the fly, again, it's 20 pound is the heaviest you can use. The leader actual that's connected to the fly can be metal, it can be wire, or monofilament or whatever. But that whole secret is your tippet.
Okay.
That's the second part. Leader, tippet, 15 inches or more, and then your butt section or of the rod that attaches to the fly line.
Okay.
And sometimes you're just using a short butt, short fly line, depending on the line you're using. And they make lines up to 15 weight now. So you got
a lot.
yeah. But when I first got into offshore big stuff, I had gotten a call from a man out in Arizona that built big game fly rods. And they're no longer in business, but they were in business for years and years and years. Guy that had written many books on fly fishing and had probably caught more permit at that time than any man in the world. Called me and said, "Bud, can I bring this guy by so you can meet him?" I said, "Well, sure." And he came by and he built me. The biggest, you couldn't find anything over a 12 weight then. He built me a 15 weight. He built me an 18 weight, and he built me a 21.
You couldn't even get line for this, huh? Like you had to make your own line, or
no. I would use the 12 weight, but pretty soon you start being able to find some heavier lines.
Okay.
And I used those rods in Costa Rica and a lot of different places, and eventually sold the 18 or the 21 weight to a doctor who had been a student of mine, and he bought that. He was going after tuna, big tuna.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, 21 weight. I mean, that's a heck of a rod.
Believe it or not, I did some shows up at Houston at the Astrodome and stuff, and I had an 18 or a 21 up there one time. They had a big casting pond for me there, and I cast that and cast a full fly line with it. And that's a heavy rod. I can't do that.
I probably can't do it either. I know, just a little bit.
But you don't need that. That's you want your 6 to 10 weight rods.
Getting out there. So I mean, one thing that really stands out is, at some point, and you said in the kind of that 90s, in the early 90s, mid 90s, you decided to go on, exclusively fly fishing. And so really, like, what is it about?
What really turned me on?
Yeah, what is it about fly fishing that
Because
you enjoy versus?
You fall in love with fly fishing.
So what is it about fly fishing that kind of people fall in love with?
I figure if I can catch them on an artificial bait, I can catch them on a fly.
Okay.
I have more enjoyment fishing a fly rod. I would rather catch one fish on a fly than 10 on a spin casting or bait casting.
And and that's actually the physical fighting of the fish, or just kind of
it's stalking and hunting that fish. And side casting is my big love.
Yep.
And putting that fly that you tied on that fish and setting that hook.
And that's where I was going. Like, it's tying that fly.
When you went with me, did you enjoy the fly?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's good for me, but for me, it's it's a different experience, right? Yeah. And that's why I really enjoyed it. I mean, I've gone out and I've caught a lot. I don't catch a lot of fish, but when I've caught a few fish, throwing soft plastics, and even like when I transitioned in from throwing bait to soft plastics, that was a transition in itself. And it's like, okay, now we go out fishing and we still doing a lot of the same stuff. And yeah, it's nice to catch fish or more fish in this, but it's just like it's a different art now. It's like
there was a time in my life I was a fish hog, and like you got fish in the freezer, it gets freezer burned, you wind up throwing it away.
Right.
And one time, back when I was tournament fishing, and I was a fish hog, and I had set a couple world records at that time.
For what species?
That was for kingfish.
Okay.
And I believe I had another world record. It was maybe a redfish. And I was in a restaurant eating. I wasn't really as much into fly fishing then as I was in the next year or so after that. And somebody a guy made some little snide remark about fly fishing. You don't catch how he's catching fish on the damn fly. It kind of invigorated me to catch more fish on the fly.
Yep.
And so be it. I did it.
Yep. And really, I mean, I think, like, I'm not fly fishing to prove anything to anyone, right? I'm doing it because I enjoy it, right?
I did it because I enjoyed it.
Right, yeah.
But, and I always carry a whistle.
What the whistles for?
If I think I've got a record fish, I can see somebody, I start whistling, I'm trying to wave them in, because I want a witness. And I always get a witness if at all possible.
Yep.
I think you alluded to it a little bit, a while ago. You used the word art to it. If me throwing a lure, throwing the top water on a regular rod, to me really isn't an art to when I see somebody actually throwing that.
I think it is an art. I mean,
if you watch a fly fish, but there is an art and beauty to it.
Exactly, and that's what I'm alluding to.
And it's you'd be surprised how many women fly fishermen. We've got a gal named Meredith McCord that probably has over 100 IGFA world records, a Texas girl. And, man, I'm proud as a peacock of that lady.
And she fishes where primarily?
Well, she's out of the Houston area, I think. She's in all the magazines.
Yeah.
She's doing a fantastic job. She's running trips. She's on television all the time. She's on the group that does the tarpon and basically the tarpon bonefish trust deal, and she's really made a name for herself. And Meredith, she's quite a gal.
So, Bud, I mean, you're 83.
83, be 84 in May.
And how often are you fly fishing?
Every week.
Every week.
I had some little vertigo problems, so it messed me up for about 6 months. I finally got rid of that. I'll be fly fishing at least 3 to 4 days a week.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And it's good exercise.
Yeah.
I need that upper body because
But I mean, so is going to the gym, right? So I mean, like,
that's my gym.
I know, that's what I'm saying, right? It's like
and I'm getting in and up out of towers.
Yep.
I'm doing lower body, thighs, legs, getting in and out of those towers. I'm up there when I'm fishing. I dance.
Yeah. Well, you're getting like the physical, but it's also the mental part of it, like the just relieving out there, just kind of the.
Well, it's just as an average day wearing this Fitbit, I'll get 3,000 or 4,000 steps. If I'm fishing, I'm getting 12,000, 15,000 steps.
Yeah, you're moving a lot out there. You're dancing a lot out there. So yeah, good deal. So I mean, as far as you know, you're going to keep on fly fishing, and that's what you love to do. And
absolutely, you will see me on the water. I'm teaching my girlfriend how to run the boat right now.
So she can get you to the spots, and you just got to show her how to find some fish and spot fish.
I got her starting fly fishing too. She fishes, but she's freshwater up in the mountains. I get her on. I've tried to get her fly fishing saltwater, and I try not to be nasty or mean. I know she gets frustrated. So
my wife gets
somebody
frustrated.
else teach her.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day too, right? It's just like women, or specifically like our significant others. It's just like they can learn it from someone else, but it's like when it's coming from their significant other, it's like but you're better off going with a fishing guide or someone that's not you.
You'd be surprised how these little kids could take to that fly fishing.
Yep. Oh, actually,
all of a sudden they're out there. Man, they're casting up a storm.
Yeah, I've got it here somewhere. I've got a little,
right
yeah, actually right here. I've got a little 4-foot form rod that I actually, and you can buy these.
A good practice rod.
You can buy these little kits, and I bought it for my daughter, and if my daughter thinks it's a game, right? And
that's all right.
It is at some point.
And it doesn't take much, and we're not casting. We're casting maybe 10, 15 feet, but it really is just a 4-foot rod with some fly line on it, and you just cast from here to the door, and you just like get them out there. But my daughter's kind of working it. And I'm not trying to teach her how to be a fly fisherman, but she just enjoys kind of like, hey, it's a game. We're gonna play this, And we sit down and we tie flies, and I mean we tie like on a lot of tubes, right? But she likes unicorn flies and things that'll never get fish. Right, most of the things that we tie don't have hooks on them for her, but she just like, oh, Daddy, like we're gonna put purple, we're gonna make this one flowers, and we're gonna do this, right? And then we have a little book here.
You ought to save all those flies.
Oh yeah, we do.
Put them in a package, date it, when it was, and how old she was.
I haven't dated
10
them.
years from now, pull them out.
Well, I'm just storing them. Like we have like a wall where we just kind of hang them there. Every time she ties a fly, we put it up there. And really, like at first I was helping her, and now she's like, no, Daddy, like don't. I want to do it myself. And like she pushes me back, and so she just. But it's pretty fun, and she enjoys it. And not to say she's gonna be a fly fisherman, but she just enjoys working with her hands and doing things like that, and these little form rods too. And the idea around this, but actually, like I mean, I wasn't going there with that. These little form rods here, I mean, it's a good little thing you can use back home, and you can buy these, you know, a form rod like this, or you can actually go to like Academy and buy like a $20 fly rod set, and it comes with like little flies in there, and you can go to any of these ponds, Fireman's Pond or Fireman's Lake there in McAllen, or any of the ponds here, and just get out there and start practicing your form, and maybe sometimes you'll hook up a small little fish there. But
what we really need to do is take your camera and go out on the boat and go through the basics.
Yeah. Now let's do that. I want to go catch some fish. We could definitely.
I'll film.
Both of you.
Yeah, we got that. So, but and as far as like boats, I mean, you can really fly fish off of most boats, or do you think your boat needs to be rigged up to
You can
fly
fly fish off any boat, but if my boat was designed and built by New Water Boat Works, they've built 2 boats for me. They have casting towers on both of them netted. I sold one of them to a former student, and I did a little bigger one because I wanted a faster, safer boat. And when they get me home, if I don't feel good, I can get home quick. And they track good. I want a boat, if there's a series of potholes I want to throw flies at, that I could set my engine. It'll kind of take me with a little bit of wind right down through those holes. I don't care if it's a John boat, scooter, kayak, or whatever. It gives you a platform to fish off of.
Yeah.
And this Vibrio, that scares the devil out of me. So I'm not wading. I will wade with waders on this winter.
Yep. But you're duck hunting too. I mean, so you're in the water.
Yeah. But to get out and wade like I used to, I'm chicken.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy getting out and wading. I mean, it's just like, and for me, like that's the first, and that's kind of how I transition. So I'm still learning how to fly fish. I've caught a few fish on the fly, but kind of my transition is like, I don't want to be like, every time I go fishing, I take my fly rod and I tell myself the first hour and a half, I'm just going to throw a fly. And that's kind of, and like little by little, I'm just kind of building up that tolerance.
If you're really serious, and I think you are, you will take anything but a fly rod.
I've done that before.
Make yourself fish the fly rod. Tell your buddies, leave your casting rods at home.
And that's where I struggle, or not struggle.
Well, it's like I told you, it's like an alcoholic. He quits drinking, but he still wants to run around with his buddies that drink all the time. That's kind of hard on him. And if you the same thing with a fly rod and your bait casting guys and your spin casters, they're going to break your rod eventually.
I was eventually going to get there.
And they mess up the water.
Yep.
They're throwing where you want to throw.
Yeah, so like I have one of my buddy Santiago that was logged on here, and so like whenever he comes fishing, like that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go fly fishing. We'll carry one spinning rod just in case we see some fish that are really spooky and that you can't get too close with them, and just we'll throw a little bit further like that. But for the most part, I mean, like 90% of the time I go out with him, we're fly fishing because he's good at spotting fish, and he stands up on the tower on the top, and he's telling us, hey, he's over there, and he likes to pole too, right? So
that's good.
So we take turns, right? So someone's up there poling, and someone's in the front fly fishing, and but you know that's one of my buddies from San Antonio, and if he's not here, I don't have another buddy here in this area that's kind of like has that same mindset. I know several people that fly fish, but they're kind of like me that are like, we're going to go out there for a little bit, but we want to go out there and catch fish, right? And so we're kind of getting to that point here, and everyone's kind of building a tolerance. I think even I'm building that tolerance just little by little, just 1 hour at a time or 10 minutes at a time. And right now it's an hour and a half, then it'll be 2 hours, and it'll be 2.5 hours. And really, I mean, I'm going out there for the experience. I found myself getting frustrated at times, or just because I can't cast, right? And so like the last time like 2 times, I went fishing in early October. and I saw some tailing reds up on the shoreline, and it was really nice. And I had my fly rod with me. I'm gonna get these guys. And I started like walking really slow to them, and like I was probably maybe about around that 50 feet range, 50, 60 feet range, and I'm not sure what I did, but I spooked them, right? And I got really frustrated.
Sometimes we get in a hurry to cast instead of getting close enough to cast.
And so maybe I would just get really excited about it, and then I spooked him, and I got really frustrated. And I was like, oh man.
A lot of times, I don't know, you'll see a pot of reds with their tails feeding right there, and a lot of times there'll be 2 or 3 trout around them, and you can throw to the edge of it and catch a trout
without spooking them.
And then you want to put the fly right there where that red is, not line them.
Yeah,
that's probably what you probably lined
one of them when I was
and spooked it.
Yeah, I just I remember I was really excited, and
I already lined the red.
But but I mean, so you've been fly fishing, you enjoy doing that, and you've done more than your part of kind of helping increase the awareness and getting more people out there fly fishing over the years. We're hoping to follow your tracks here and kind of get there. Obviously, I'm still early on, and I rely a lot on you and with Mark to help us kind of cover that gap, if you will, help bridge that gap. And so we'll continue to do what we can and to work with you and with the fly fishermen here to kind of get people out here. So I know we filmed that one video of Tiny Uno. The camera wasn't set up. So and you've got requests. I've got requests about trying to get that cleaned up a little bit. So maybe during that time we'll over the next few weeks or months we'll record another video here. And
we ought to do one on. You did one on a deer hair popper? No. We do one with a deer hair popper with some foam, one layer of foam on the very front. And I like foam poppers, but the thing is, in shallow water, a big trout or a big red will create a wake, and it'll wake that popper.
Yeah.
But so I use deer hair. Deer hair hugs the water better with a little bit of foam on it that protects deer hair and gives you a great fly. That's a wonderful fly.
Yeah.
We have a woolhead mullet we haven't shown you. And then, of course, my favorite fly of all is not the numero uno now. It's one we call the attractor mud minnow. And I've had a couple world records on that. And I love the mud minnow. It's just a neat fly.
So definitely, I mean, there's a lot of things. So I think that would be a good, like, kind of way to start our video, right? So you mentioned, like, 5 or 6 flies that you carry with you and kind of going through that, saying, like, these are the things, this will cover your bases.
The flies I'm talking about, you could tie them surface, subsurface, slow sink, and fast sink. Yep. You can sink them at up to 9 inches a second.
Yeah, I think that would be, like, again, that would be the good part of it.
In the wintertime, your fish, it gets cold out up there on the flats, and they'll go to that deeper, warmer water and mud bottom, and you need to go down deeper. Yeah. And these flies will work either way. You tie them however you want them. You'll have sinkers, whatever.
Yep. All right, so Sam's asking some questions about a trout in 2002, Aurora City. I guess Sam Sanchez, I'm not, she's asking him a story of a big trout, 2002 from Arroyo City. I don't know if there's anything. I really don't know the story around it, but he said obviously he knows you've caught a lot of big fish and a lot of big trouts, and he was just asking if there was just kind of big fish that you overall. So you said you big sheephead, big drum, big trout, everything. You've caught them all on the fly.
I catch little ones too.
big and small. So good deal. So
but he's referring to a certain fish. I did have a world record in 2002 on a trout.
Okay.
That could be it.
Yeah, maybe that's what he was asking.
In Arroyo City.
Okay, I don't know. Yeah, he was asking about just kind of like, I guess, 2002 trout.
What we call the big lady. In fact, if you have me that book, I've got a picture of her. Yeah.
And that's the one that you just.
Well, that's one of them.
Yeah, but how do you catch a big trout like that? Like you come up to him and you just.
There's a YouTube video on YouTube also. That shows quite a bit. Well, there's all the numero uno flies.
Yeah, maybe we can show a close up of that Rogelio there, if you don't mind. Oh wow, this is awesome, man! This is
no joke.
There's the big lady right there.
Oh wow, that's the one in 2002.
I think. Let me get my glasses.
Yeah, that's oh yeah, it is 2002. Yeah,
Let's say 2002.
Yep. yeah, wow, that's a massive trout. I'm just looking at it, that picture. Like you see that belly on that trout.
That fish weighed 15.6 pounds, and it was caught on 16-pound test.
What's the length on that?
37 and a quarter.
Wow.
Wow.
There was a lot of stories on that fish. Had plenty of witnesses on it too.
So this is like you got a lot of fish on here, and it's just kind of like your scrapbook or like your kind of your stories. And
I've got most of my stuff. I didn't even know I had this one. There's a big 36-inch trout.
wow.
Spawned out. She didn't have any fat to her. That's my old scooter, big trout. There's a big trout there.
There's definitely, I mean, obviously, like you got a lot of pictures here. I guess each of these fish has like its own story to it.
There's a couple of plus 30s.
Now, all these are fly.
Everything on fly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Bud,
There's another nice over 30.
so there's
All caught on fly.
So, but definitely. I mean, you're here. Whenever I talk it to anybody about fly fishing here in the valley, actually, it's how I met. Someone referred me to you when I was first looking into it. I was like, "Hey, I'm looking into getting fly fishing. Like, where can I get some direction?" And I really thought like a lot of it was happening toward the island. And someone said, "Well, what about Bud? He's like right down the road from you." And I said, "What?" And I'm like, yeah, Bud, he used to come out as like, and then I talked to him. My dad's like, oh yeah, we used to watch him on TV, and like, and so he used to come out on the shows, and so little by little, I mean, like I just like, oh, and then I started doing my research, and it's like, oh wow, Bud knows. I mean, Bud's done it all, right? Like he's caught a lot of fish out there, and he's fly fishing expert, and definitely in the school, and I've learned a lot in just a short period of time. So I definitely want to thank you for everything you've done for me personally. As well as everything, like just every time I talk to you and just kind of your openness to kind of help people out is definitely, it means a lot to me, and as well as the people that you're helping out as well. So we do have a little bit of a gift here for you.
Well, I'll tell you, you two guys got to come with me, and we're going to do one from all the basics, starting.
I definitely need the basics. Yes, sir.
So the other day you showed us how to tie an Uno, right? And so you tied two of them, one with a fish skin, and one with the marabou or the fox hair coming off of it, right? And so what we did is we like to present you with some artwork here that Fabian put together for us. So it's your Uno fly on your on a hat there for you, so you can see it. You've got something out there.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we put together here is we made a little shirt for you here. It says fly fishing, and fly fishing
Got the Uno on it.
is
yeah.
your addiction, right? So obviously fly fishing is your addiction, and that's what it says in the front. And in the back we have a picture of your Uno. So I don't know if you can see that, Rogelio, pretty good, but basically we put these together for you just so you can, just to thank as a token of for everything you've done for us.
I think you're on the right track for many good times.
Yeah, no, definitely. So definitely thanks for coming today. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for teaching us for fly fishing. Anyone that wants to learn anything, I know you've been really open and kind of really accessible to me, but anyone that has any questions, you respond to them on email.
If they want to, they can email me at carlbudroland@gmail.com.
Okay.
That's ROWLAND, like row your boat on land.
Right.
There you go.
So we'll put your email address here, Bill. Actually, we'll just kind of leave it here, and then
But I don't want too much because a couple of them got hold of me here recently, and I sent them some free flies, but I can't send any more free flies.
So definitely you have to buy your flies now from, but
I'm not selling them, but
or
maybe you'll have them.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have what you need to make them is kind of where we're getting at. So we're trying to position it. So we've had people reach out to us, hey, where do we get these twisters? Where do we get this? That can you show this? And so I think over the next few weeks we'll continue to kind of work through those details and kind of have everyone. So the idea is to kind of get people into fly fishing and get them out there and get them the basics they need to get out on the water. But thank you very much. So people can reach out to you via email or face or social media, Facebook. And
Facebook.
I definitely also, just want to thank you. I did grow up watching, the shows that you're talking about. Obviously in the late '90s, early '90s. I think I named all my dogs Coco, even though that wasn't their name. But it's one of those things. It's cool, to have you here, and again, to continue that legacy, to continue what you're doing, and hopefully we can help a little bit just to kind of continue that tradition, because this is definitely something I probably want to start looking into, because it's just something cool and something that it is an art. I mean, I've seen it done, and to know somebody, and again, can't thank you enough for being on here.
Well, I've enjoyed it.
Yep. No, thanks a lot, Bud. Definitely, just one last thing, so when I first met Bud, I learned a lot about fly fishing, but I actually learned a lot about the history of it, right? So both times I've been to Bud's place at Port Isabel and as well as here in McAllen, and it's just like, I don't want to say you're walking in a museum, but there's a lot of history.
Like a museum.
Okay. Well, Bud said it's like walking in a museum, but there's definitely, there's a lot of stuff there, right? There's walls and walls of old rods, old reels, like old tackle box, old fly boxes, and just hats.
Thousands of flies.
Hats with flies all over them. Like, it's just like, it's amazing. And just kind of hearing the stories and kind of, how the stories behind this fly and where this came from. And just like, there's a lot to it. And that's kind of been one of the things I've really enjoyed about this. And I know a lot of people don't hear about this. And it's one of the reasons we wanted to get Bud out here. And hopefully over the next few months, we can kind of share more of those stories here to kind of get out there. Because for me, I mean, that's kind of what it's the story behind stuff, right? So going out there and enjoying it is one thing, but just kind of hearing and understanding the history and kind of like, oh, wow, this is like, there's a lot to it. And that's very enjoyable to us. So anything that we can do to help share those stories and share your stories, we would definitely we will do whatever we can. So, but thanks again, Bud, for coming to our show. Thanks to all you guys for staying tuned and watching our videos. Specifically here, hopefully you got enough of a little bit of a fire in you, or a little bit of an interest in you, that you want to get out and get to fly fishing here in the saltwater. Like Bud said, there's not Bud's caught a lot of fish here, and he says his greatest experience is catching a fish on a fly that he tied, right, or that you tie, right? So it starts here, figuring out what the patterns you're going to do, and kind of working and understanding the biology around it, and working and tying your fly, and then going out there and catching a fly. And just that whole experience, you're not just pulling something out of a bag or whatever, right? You're going in there, and just that whole art of it. And so definitely it's experience. I've done a little bit of it. I haven't done it to that degree. I've caught a few small fish on there, but nothing too exciting. But it's something that I'm pursuing as well.
And tying flies is very psychological. If anything's bothering you at night and you can't sleep, go tie a fly, you'll get well.
There you go.
Yeah, I tie flies drinking beer, but anyways, I drink a few beers and tie flies, and anyways. But anyways, thanks guys for watching our video and staying tuned. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and really let us know, like in the comments below, if what's holding you back from getting out to fly fishing, or if you have any questions regarding on how to get started, if you need some guidance on a starter reel, a starter rod. I know Reddington has some stuff that's pretty, they have these kits that are like,
shirts on.
Yeah, he's got a Reddington. Reddington has a really nice kit out there that's about $160, $170 that you can get out there. It all comes in a box, tube, rod, reel, whatever. So it doesn't have to be your $300, $400, $500 set, right? That a lot of the stuff costs, but you can get out there and for about $150, $160 and get started. Probably even cheaper than that, but this is just some of the stuff that I'm aware of. But anyway, so let us know below what kind of any questions you have around getting into fly fishing, and we'll see you guys on the next video. So thanks a lot, guys.
In my mind, I've got 'em big red on the line. That's where I go when I'm itching to feed my 7-day addiction.